Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this Economist World Ocean Summit panel. You've joined another panel on aquaculture. We're looking at how we might remove feed as a potential bottleneck to aquaculture expansion. And we're going to be asking, how can high quality, sustainable feed be produced at scale? Where will those alternative protein ingredients come from? And how do we address potential concerns around so-called novel ingredients? My name is Melanie Siggs. I'm from the Global Aquaculture Alliance, and I'm going to be navigating this discussion with our three panelists today. I'm not going to spend time sharing their biographical details, but direct you to the link online where you can learn all about them. With just 40 minutes ahead, I want to get straight into the discussion. So, gentlemen, aquaculture already accounts for at least half of the world's seafood consumption. It's increasingly hailed as a critical part of a planet-appropriate nutrition portfolio, particularly in light of an ever-expanding population. Necessary increases of 20-30 million tonnes by 2030 are widely shared. Clearly, on this panel, we're going to talk specifically about the proportion of that increase that's going to come from fed species, because we're talking about feed. And what I want to start by considering is the big picture of aquaculture's role for the future. So I'm going to turn first to Petter Johannessen, who is the Executive Director of IFFO, the Marine Ingredients Organization. Petter, welcome. Can I start by asking you, what role are marine ingredients going to play in the future of a global food system?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on this panel to discuss a very important topic. This is high on IFFO's agenda, and is also one of the core challenges of our value chain. Just a few words on IFFO first, maybe. We are the global trade organization for marine ingredients, and we have more than 200 members from 43 countries in our membership. Members are producers of marine ingredients, feed companies, NGOs, financial institutions, and other related industries. So we have a lot of different members in our membership. To your question, I think marine ingredients, they are known today for offering a complete nutritional package with all the essential amino acids, vitamins, minerals, as well as the EPA and DHA, omega-3s, that are so essential to both farmed fish, providing both fish health, and also benefits the consumer of the farmed fish with highly nutritious and healthy protein. So since the beginning of industrialized aquaculture, marine ingredients have been the nutritional cornerstone, so to speak, of aquafeed ingredients. It still is, and marine ingredients will continue to contribute as a strategic ingredient, not only in volumes to provide food security, but also in nutrients to provide quality food through quality feed.
Petter, what you're saying is that marine ingredients have a critical role, not just because of history, but because of their nutritional value, and we shouldn't overlook them just because we have these new and novel ingredients coming through.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I think this is key, because we don't need just more food. We need more quality food.
So let me just turn attention to Allan LeBlanc, my second panelist here. Allan is the Vice President, the Aquaculture Lead at Calysta. Allan, Calysta describes itself as a world leader in developing a sustainable solution to meeting this widening protein gap. There's a lot of talk about that widening protein gap, and what I'd like to hear from you is a little bit about how big an issue is food security. What's that main barrier? What's the role that aquaculture can play moving forward?
Sure, and I think, thank you, Melanie. I think when you hear about a protein gap, right, whether it's the World Resource Institute or World Wildlife Fund, right? It's 50 to 100 million tons of additional protein for human consumption over the next few decades. And it's a critical challenge for the world. It's something that's going to have to be addressed through all sources of aquaculture. But we're in a situation where aquaculture is the most sustainable source of protein production, whether that's feed efficiency and feed conversion or greenhouse gas emissions, right? Aquaculture is kind of the one that I think is healthiest for people as well as healthiest for the planet. And at the same time, food security is national security. You see that throughout East Asia, the countries, whether they're fighting over fishing resources or trying to secure land in Africa for a supply of raw ingredients. And so what it really points to is that aquaculture might be the solution for feeding a growing world, but the second order problem is really, well, how do you feed all these fish? And for us, I think it's really a story of alternatives supplementing the traditional ingredients like Petter's talked about to allow us to supply this extra 30, 50 million tons of aquaculture feed ingredients that we expect to need in the next couple of decades. And Calysta is part of that. We're a single cell protein producer. We're building a plant in China with Adissio in Chongqing.
Allan, I'm going to stop you because I'm going to let you talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But I want to make sure that we have everybody has an opportunity to jump in right at the beginning here. And I want to bring in my third panelist. I want to bring Carlos in. Carlos is the chief executive at BioMar, who are global leaders in aquafeed. Carlos, BioMar has been operating since 1962, so you must have seen a lot of change and a massive growth since then. If aquaculture is going to meet these predictions, great for the planet, great for humans, all those things, but if it's going to meet that continued growth in a responsible way, do you think that the aquaculture feed industry is ready to face this kind of expected large expansion globally without putting even more pressure on the planet and on the environment?
Yeah. Well, thanks, Melanie, and thanks for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to be here with these two panelists. And the answer is yes. I think we are prepared, but of course it is a challenge. Also, the two panelists before have talked about how this is going to grow and the challenge to feed it. I think in BioMar we like to talk more about nutrients and not specific raw materials. We are in the middle of the value chain, and we are essential for the value chain. If 80% of the impact that aquaculture will have comes from feed, and of course 80% of that comes from raw materials or nutrients. So the answer is yes, but we will need to find alternative sources to, I would not say supplement or replace marine ingredients, but more complement it. I fully agree.
So Carlos, can I jump in there and just ask you to expand on that a little? Because at the beginning we asked Petter, the role of marine ingredients, and I just want to put you on the spot a little bit. What do you see as the contribution of marine ingredients, which is very traditional, in the future of seafood versus these new or novel ingredients or land-based ingredients like soy or grains, for example? How is that balance going to play out, do you think?
Yeah, I fully agree that marine ingredients are extremely important. The nutrients they have are extremely important for fish and for shrimp, aquaculture in general. So I fully agree with Peter. Having said that, we will need to complement them with what you described before: novel ingredients, plant-based raw materials. But basically, we see at certified fisheries and responsible fisheries. We should not just stop using those raw materials and replace it by, for example, plant-based. We also need to see the impact of that. So this is a never-ending game where we need to be agile. We need to be working with our recipes and especially doing a lot of R&D on new raw materials. So novel ingredients will play a role, plant-based will play a role, but we really need to be focused on developing it, working with the suppliers, do strategic partnerships, being transparent, because this is what the consumer wants now. They want transparency in what they eat.
Okay, so we're starting to bring in the consumer, and I want to come back to that a little bit later and just sort of explore how much they might understand and how much it might mean to them. But before we do that, I want to stick with this subject around the balance between marine ingredients and other areas. Petter, I know that IFFO are really focused on ingredients derived from forage fisheries or byproducts, waste products from processing and so on. How do you see, this sustainable feed building out and growing aquaculture, that balance?
I think, it's tempting to use this, and I would say that in the big picture, I think that the collaboration now is the new innovation. We have that more and more, and we are all aware that we are on a critical timeline when it comes to providing enough healthy food for the growing population, as you said. So I think it's important that we look at the facts and also realize the magnitude of the challenge. You mentioned in the opening that there is a need for additional 20 to 30 million tons of feed ingredients supported also by
and
FAO.
I think Allan mentioned 50. So, we have a lot of different figures around that, but we know it's a lot.
Yeah, it is a big challenge. And I think the limited growth potential on land means that the growth will have to come from innovation in the food systems. And also, I think we have to realize that we need to investigate more in the marine environment and mariculture. So I think supplementing or complementing ingredients, as you said, Carlos, are coming online more and more. But still the challenge in this, the volume, is still there. Scalability and economy in this development is really key. So for IFFO, I think also, sorry.
No, carry on, please. Finish.
I think for IFFO, also investigating the potential of byproducts. So I would like to talk a little bit more about that. I hope there's a chance for that. But byproducts, as you mentioned, is important to combine both innovation and sustainability. And the circular mindset is really something that we cherish in our industry. And already 30% of the global fish meal supply comes from byproducts.
Yeah. We'll see if we can find time to come back to that, Petter. But I do want to just go to Allan, who has quite a focused view on this. I know that you feel quite strongly, Allan, about the right and responsible way to provide protein ingredients for aquafeeds. And so tell us a little bit about Calysta's vision and how that might differ from some of the things that we're hearing.
Yeah, I don't know if it necessarily differs with anything we're hearing, because I think alternatives don't exist to supplant the existing supply chain. We're not going to be in a world in a couple years where soy protein or fish meal is no longer used to feed aquaculture species. I mean, I think that's the reality. But at the same time, growth from these resources is difficult. I mean, you have to acknowledge that vast increases of soybeans largely come due to land use change in South America, and whether that's the rainforest or the Cerrado, right? There's clearly an environmental cost to that. At the same time, most fishery resources are at capacity, and I applaud IFFO what they've done around sustainably sourcing and sustainably managing and certifying these fisheries. But at the same time, there are lots that aren't. And once a fish is fed, it's difficult to tell the difference. And so one of the things that really Calysta can do, and I think all the alternative ingredients can do, is provide a way to continue to grow this pie and grow the feed supply without these negative impacts on the environment, whether they're biodiversity or land use or greenhouse gases. And I mean, as an example, a 100,000 ton feed kind plant, which is the full scale size of our plant that we're building in China, is equivalent of 400,000 tons of wild caught fish and is equivalent of 500 square kilometers of soy plantations. And the scale of that is significant, and I think the scale of the alternatives that are being brought on across the board are meaningful.
Interesting. So what I'm hearing very much is that it needs to be a mix of all of these things, but whichever they are, whichever ingredient is being put into the pie, we got to make sure that that's appropriate and sustainable, whether it's about certified fisheries, whether it's about certified soy, whether it's about single cell proteins, whatever these things are, we've got to be doing it well to make a great aquaculture an even better proposition than it is right now. We've discussed the development of fish feed ingredients a lot over the last decade, and a few of the elements continue to be at the forefront of those discussions. There's things like crickets and soldier fly larvae and single cell proteins and omega-3, all sorts of things. Do we have examples of these actually in mainstream aquaculture feed and production yet? And do we have a sense whether consumers are aware of the different ingredients and responding to what's going into the feed? Carlos, I want to come to you first, in part because we've got a question from the audience. It's coming to us from Ahmed El Kadaz from Deep Branch, who are a UK-based carbon recycling biotechnology company. He's asking if you can share in particular BioMar's view on alternative proteins and the single cell protein space. Could you speak to that for a moment?
Yes. I believe this is the future for sure. We need to complement marine ingredients and also plant ingredients, and definitely single cell technology will be one of the ways to do it. I think there's still some way to go. We can discuss different sources of single cell proteins or alternatives, but I think there is some way to go. But definitely, it will allow the industry to more or less tailor-made proteins to our industry, which is extremely important. We usually fight in our recipes for complementing, for do optimizations. So a raw material which is designed for our industry is extremely valuable from a cost efficiency point of view, and also from a sustainability point of view. So definitely we have a very positive view on the single cell proteins, answering the question.
A very positive view, thank you. Petter, turning to you for a moment, we've mentioned consumers a few times, and I wonder if IFFO's done work on this. Are you aware that do consumers think about what animals or fish are fed, or do you think it's just kind of a challenge for our aquaculture's moral compass? We even hear that some people think that it's abhorrent to feed fish to fish, and yet, of course, in the natural environment, that's happening all the time. So it's interesting just to think about what consumers are aware of and whether you're getting any feedback on that.
Yeah, we certainly do. We certainly do. Not only on the new raw material, as you mentioned, we also get feedback on marine ingredients. And I'll try to answer the question with from a sustainability angle. And unfortunately, I think the economy is very often left out of the discussion on sustainability. But so if the three sustainability pillars, environmental, social, and economic values, are taken into consideration, I agree with Carlos and also Allan. It will be the nutritional properties of the ingredients that will decide whether there is room in the recipe, because that's really the question all the time here. It's least cost optimization of the recipes, providing the right nutritional value to the fish. So I think to provide a solution to this challenge that we are discussing today, I think focus has to be on nutrition. Fully agree with that. I think that's we're all aligned on that, it seems. And again, this is central also to the economy of the farming of fish for the whole value chain. So we need sustainable ingredients that have the right nutritional profile. And I think this is really what has to come into the discussion. And I think we also share the responsibility of sharing the facts around this complex issue, making also consumers understand what we are focusing at to provide healthy food.
And of course, sustainability is about that. It's about that price. It's about the social aspect, and we might include nutrition in that. Quality, all sorts of things come into that. But feed is quite removed from perhaps what consumers are thinking about at that point of sale. And I don't think that we've dug into that enough yet to understand that balance of ingredients as being what makes a consumer comfortable, whether it's actually affecting any kind of buying decisions at this moment. Maybe that's too far down the line. Allan, have Calysta done any kind of work on this? Do you have a sense of whether consumers have, if I may put it, a valid viewpoint right now about how farmed fish are fed?
Yeah, we have done some work. We've both talked to retailers and asked for their views on what their customers will think, as well as done some small scale focus groups with the likes of University of Stirling. I mean, I think what we've found is customers are quite comfortable with single cell protein and alternatives. At the same time, they do not think about what fish are fed very often, and I don't think we should expect them to. I think the general response is that they want to go into a store and be assured that anything they buy is sustainable enough, right? And there might be a premium option that is healthier or tastes better or has more sustainable features, but the baseline they want to be taken care of for them, so that they don't have to read about in The Guardian or the New York Times that there was a slave labor issue somewhere. And it's not something that we should expect consumers to be experts on. Really, the industry needs to provide them with options that are all acceptable.
Okay, so we could dig into that a little bit further, but I see that we have, Allan, I'm going to stay with you for a moment because we do have another audience question, also from Ahmed. You've mentioned your China-based facility, I think, a couple of times, and he's interested if you're willing to chat about that for a moment, when that China-based facility will be market ready, what's the capacity plus key learnings on, and why building a plant was not successful in the USA, if that's indeed true. That's how the questions come through to me.
Yeah, I think so. To cover the China plant first, we're working with Adissio, who's a global methionine producer, active across agriculture, animal feed, and we're building a plant in Chongqing, China. The initial capacity is 20,000 tons. They are pouring concrete as we speak, although I'm sure they're going to take a break for Chinese New Year very shortly. And we expect that plant to be completed in Q3 of 22, so next year, about 18 months from now, and producing product in Q4 of 22. So we're very excited about that. And the plant will expand initially up to 80,000 or 100,000 tons. So the ramp is kind of already being talked about and planned out. As far as in North America, I think we're still committed to opportunities worldwide and supplying both European aquaculture opportunities and pet food as well. I think for us, the focus is really the largest aquaculture market, which is in Asia. And if we did learn something in the U.S., I don't think that plant, it definitely wasn't not a success. It has been delayed. I think that's very clear. Since then, we've learned a lot about site selection. We've partnered with BP, we have a global partnership for gas and power. And I think both of those things have put us in a really strong position to get our first plant online in China, but also come back to North America for future opportunities.
Okay, Ahmed, I hope that answered your question, and thank you for sending that through to us. Carlos, I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to labour this point a little bit on ingredients. Mindful that environmental and social issues are continuing to affect kind of wild harvest fisheries and to have an impact potentially on marine ingredients, but there are also a lot of issues affecting land-based ingredients as well, and so we shouldn't only beat up the fisheries, if you like. Could you comment on sort of work ongoing to ensure, for example, that soy is deforestation free, and what more we need to do about that, and perhaps touch upon whether we're collaborating effectively on those issues with other animal feed ingredient users and governments and NGOs. So it's not, we're not the only user of these ingredients in aquafeed. We have other proteins using that as well. Could you speak to that for a moment?
Yeah, definitely. As I said, fisheries is not the only source. We need to make sure that all the other ingredients are as low impact as possible. Specifically in the case of soy, and I would say specifically SPC, soy protein concentrate, I think the aquaculture industry have reached quite a significant statement. Maybe you have read it in the news. I think right now we have a certified free deforestation supply chain in Brazil. And that's a big achievement. Of course, collaboration can always be improved, and especially with other industries. I think maybe there's something to do there in the collaboration with the other industries, which is not aquaculture. But I think in the case of aquaculture, and specifically in the salmon industry, this is addressed in a very good way to the major suppliers around the world. Soy is not the only one. We need to see at some other plant raw materials and try to follow and to have certifications in most of them. Again, basically, we will complement this with other raw materials, with the novel raw materials, but it's extremely important to have this deforestation free agreement, especially in Brazil. So I think good achievements in that area. Also, new sources of soy around the world. So I guess the aquaculture industry is working okay with this, but there could be better ways of cooperating with the other animal feeds. Is that answering your question?
Thank you. Allan, you've mentioned pet food, for example, a couple of times. Are you seeing the users of feed in that aspect addressing these other issues as robustly as aquafeeds are, or are we leading the way on this?
Well, I think obviously food and pet food are probably more sensitive to these kind of sources, but part of that is also that they have the buying power and capacity to be very selective about what they use. But within the broader animal production system, I think aquaculture is clearly leading the way when you compare it to poultry or terrestrial livestock. Sorry, did you?
Oh no, it's fine. Keep going, Allan. Tell me more.
Oh, I was going to say that the challenge that I see is really when you transition from, yes, some feed mills are doing the right thing, but once you're producing fish, they're kind of indistinguishable. And one of the things that alternatives and feed kind in particular is trying to do is enable that traceability, where we can use the same technology that they use today for champagne and honey, and verify that a fish was fed feed kind, so that you can know it was fed sustainable feed ingredients all the way to the grocery counter, and it connects that field that produced the soy protein, or the original fishery that produced the fish meal, all the way to the retail services sector.
Interesting. And this is the first time we've touched on traceability in the panel. Petter, I'm going to move over to you on two aspects, really. Sort of IFFO's engagement and experience with these non-aqua feeds and their kind of relationship with marine ingredients, but also going back to, we were talking about, the byproducts. Traceability must be quite a challenge in byproducts, I'd imagine.
Yes, I think it is one of the challenges that is evident, I think, not only in marine ingredients, but in ingredients in general. Traceability on byproducts is high on our agenda also, and there is full possibility through chain of custody systems that is being developed now by Marine Trust to secure that there are good insight and byproducts that are assurable in the value chain or in the supply chain.
So what I'm hearing really is that there is a continued need for collaboration across everyone. This isn't, it may be a competitive market in terms of whose ingredients take up the different ratios in different feeds. But I think we're recognizing that we need all of these different components to be able to meet the growth of aquaculture, over the next 10 years or so. We've talked about the fact that this is, best for planet and best for humans, and so I think we're all quite dedicated to this journey around this. We get a lot of pushback on the fish meal and the ingredient side, but also on soy. So the more that we can use maybe the certifications, work with NGOs, with environmentalists, and so on, in those aspects, we should be able to bring this all on the journey of sustainability with us to grow this aquaculture. But normally there's a couple of things which are holding us back, a few hurdles. And I just want to invite each of you to have that kind of, the plea to the audience here, but also whoever may be listening, that genie in the lamp moment. If what are those big things that if they happened would kind of jump the dial on these feed ingredients, which can meet these needs to be appropriately cost-wise, planet-appropriate, acceptable, produce nutritious seafood. What's that one thing that you would love to see happen, let's say, in the next 24 months? It's going to be a game changer. And Carlos, I'll come to you first.
Yes. From I think there's one thing is difficult to say, but definitely the single cell technology.
You can have 1.5 if you like, Carlos. You can have 1.5 if you like.
From a technology point of view, I think single cell technology definitely is changing the way this will go. Just imagine, I mean, in 2016 or 15, there was no novel oils used in the industry. Right now, we started in 2016 in BioMar. I think we have fed more than 1 million tons or more of feed since then with the novel oil, with a specific novel oil. That shows you how rapidly this can scale up when the source is very good. So single cell technologies, the algae, yeast, bacteria, etc., with the right process and caring about sustainability, definitely can be a game changer in the next 24 to 36 months. But I think also some of the legislation can be very important, maybe in a more long-term perspective. The EU Green Deal and the EU taxonomy, that compromise from EU can also be driving the agenda of companies and stakeholders in Europe. And we know that everyone is looking at what Europe is doing. So I think those two things, one legislation issue and then some technology, will be the game changers, not in the next 24 months, but going forward. That is our view.
Okay, what needs to happen on that technology? What is it that's, that you want to see happen in terms of technology? Just to push you a little bit further on that.
No. Basically, we have seen the very good example of a novel oil. In this case, we have a partner, our strategic partnership there with Corbion, and we scale it up. Actually, I think quite fast. I think it's scale. Definitely, we need some more scale. We see investments going on in different parts, but we need scale. We need with some of the sources to work more on the sustainability issues. So I think those two are the main ones: scale, investments in capacity to make it cost efficient. There's a lot of alternatives that you hear. You have mentioned them in this forum, but for them to be cost efficient, we need the scale, and
okay.
that the only way to do that is through strategic partnerships. You ask if consumers were aware of this. We have done some studies. We see the trends. They are. It's not the main concern they have. They want transparency. They want a good product, and there is some niches caring about, of course, sustainability. But it's our duty to provide a sustainable food, a healthy food, and we have to do it in a sustainable way. So and with the world of today, where people is buying online, looking at more information, definitely this will be a trend. People will begin caring much more about all these issues.
It's a good point, Carlos. More sales online means people have that little bit more time and opportunity to look for information. Allan,
exactly.
I saw you.
You don't spend you don't spend 5 seconds. You don't spend 5 seconds looking at a label in the supermarket, but definitely Absolutely. You spend maybe 15 minutes looking at the experiences, where is it coming from,
yes.
Everything online. So this will be an increased focus from consumers. Right now,
Thank you.
It's not that much.
Thank you.
Unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah.
Allan, I particularly saw you rigorously nodding your head when he was talking about scale then, and I imagine that might be something that you're giving a lot of thought to. But what would be your wishes for the next 24 months that would help change this game and accelerate it forward?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question because in my view, the ingredients, these alternative ingredients are being commercialized and scaled now, right? We've spent the last really 10 years between single cell protein and insect proteins doing the R&D, and now you're seeing a lot of capital deployed and construction projects going on to really bring this scale to the market. For me, what would change the discussion? It's not the feed companies; they're doing the R&D. They know how these ingredients work. And it's not the farmers, it's really the retail level or the food service level committing to put an SKU to a alternative feed or sustainable feed standard. And that kind of market pull from the retail level, the customer facing level, I think changes the discussion a lot because it builds in reliability of demand, and it builds in like some predictability around the future, and that is really what's going to accelerate build out and scale.
So that's how you get the scale, but you're able to forecast as well, which is of course great for investment too. So a great message there. Thank you, Allan. Now, Petter, I came to you first, and I'm going to come to you last as well. So tell me, from your perspective, from the IFFO perspective, what needs to happen in the next 24 months that's going to be a game changer for your members, for the IFFO community?
Well, thank you for that, Melanie. I think 24 months is a really short time for such a question, but still, we know that
we like to put you under a little bit of pressure.
The challenge is still 20 to 50 million tons. I think we have agreed on that. So I think knowing that marine ingredients offer such good nutrition for farmed species, there is still scope to increase volumes that offer assurance to the value chain. And I think what I really would like to see is a greater understanding and also supply chain engagement in the circular economy of marine ingredients. We touched upon it. There are some challenges still on traceability. That is coming online quickly, and we will have control of that. So harvesting marine byproducts from the processing of wild catch and farm species offers a great resource, and that can be assured and traced. And we're talking millions of tons here that are going to waste, where we could have put this into the food chain through highly valuable, nutritional, valuable.
So Petter, what do we need to do to make that happen?
As I said, we need to have the supply chain engaged in the work here, because this is really where we see how to capture what some people call waste, where we think fantastic raw material. So getting the understanding from the supply chain, getting in, again, collaboration through the supply chain to make sure that we have access to more than. Today, we have 30% of the fish meal is based on byproducts. You can just imagine what it could be if we are working close on this. So I think that is really my wish. This is one of the areas. In addition to that, if I may, we see also the growth potential on land is really not big anymore. I think we have to realize that Calysta's products that are not relying on big land areas will be one of the important complementary raw materials for the future. But we also need to investigate more on the marine environment, as I said. Obviously, taking into consideration all pillars of the sustainability, and also look into mariculture and see how can we develop raw materials and ingredients there.
Gentlemen, we are running out of time. I'm busting with more questions. Personally, I think we're just getting going. So I really hope that we can continue this conversation. But it really only remains for me now to thank you guys for joining us here today. And also to thank The Economist for giving us the space at the World Ocean Summit to have this conversation. Aquaculture has become a main part of the summit now. And I think we've all demonstrated just how important it's going to be to the food economy and to the nutrition for the planet moving forward in a sustainable way. So thank you all very, very much.
Thank you, Melanie.